Tonight, as Mayor de Blasio approaches the halfway point of his term as mayor, time to grade his performance to date. We'll recap the highs, the lows, and the challenges as he faces re-election. And then, just in a month and a half from Iowa and 2 months from New Hampshire, and what began, frankly, as a punchline could become the Republican nominee for president. Could Donald Trump really trump the GOP field? And later, baseball's all-time hits leader will remain banned from the game. But wait until you hear what Pete Rose is saying and what he's still doing before you make up your mind about it. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We're going to begin tonight in the Big Apple with a question Mayor de Blasio should be borrowing from former Mayor Ed Koch. How am I doing? When the ball drops in Times Square on New Year's Eve, not only will it usher in 2016, it will also mark the exact halfway point in the mayoral tenure of one Bill de Blasio. The mayor, he's been criticized often, including on this program, including by yours truly, as well as in print. But today, Daily News columnist Harry Siegel is out with a, well, let's call it a pro-con list that comes with a mixed message about the mayor. And it also sums up how a whole lot of New Yorkers feel about him. Siegel writes, New Yorkers don't think much of de Blasio's New York. They're stuck with him, and he's delivering, though, on his key promises. Among the pros, Siegel lists for the mayor, affordable city contracts for more than 300,000 workers, police reform while upholding city safety, 70,000 kids in the new pre-K program, his Vision Zero traffic and pedestrian safety program, adding affordable housing and housing protections, paid sick leave, and a more open city hall to minority and other interests, and all while keeping the city's economy on solid footing. Now you can contrast that with the downsides of the mayor. He's seen as an arrogant political operator, his ongoing and losing feud with Governor Cuomo, his pursuit of national progressive spotlights over the local interests, his increase in homelessness, or the increase in homelessness, even with his new plan that he launched today. He's bad with the press and has a problem when it comes to punctuality. But the numbers for the mayor seem to indicate voters focused are more on the cons than the pros. A November poll gave de Blasio just a 38% approval rate, with nearly half of New Yorkers saying he doesn't deserve a second term. Now, though his numbers are right up there with where Bloomberg and Giuliani were at this same point in their first terms, nonetheless, it was a pretty precipitous drop from where he started. So the question that I started with is what I ask now: how's he doing? Let's ask tonight's panelists. Richard Brodsky, a former Democratic New York State Assemblyman, now a senior fellow at Demos and a professor at NYU with his own issues of punctuality. Political journalist and author Dominic Carter. Richard St. Paul, Republican strategist, former vice chair for the National Black Republican Association. And next to him, Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. All right, Dom, we've gone over all the different pros and cons with him. Nonetheless, it's interesting. You do look at some of the stuff that either he's done or that's happened on his watch, whether he deserves credit or not, the economy being one of them, let's say. Nonetheless, the city hasn't gone to hell in a handbasket since he's been there. But the perception is things are worse than maybe they are. Does he have a perception problem, or does he have a bigger problem than that?
He's got a few problems. The last time I gave a letter grade was many years ago to a former governor who's now deceased, Mario Cuomo, and I gave him a D on television, and I was lectured at the urinal in the men's room by that governor for about 10 to 12 minutes.
I was worried where you were going.
Bill de Blasio gets a D, and I'm being nice.
Please.
And the guy has a major perception problem. He has a major arrogance problem. All you have to do is get on the subways, as I was today. It is disgusting, horrible. There's homeless everywhere. There's a strong perception that the city of New York, after Bloomberg and Rudy, that the city is completely going down. Completely. And that this guy is completely out of touch.
Well, we need here some standardized testing, not his perceptions. I mean, you just saw a piece that said, aside from homelessness, which ain't chopped liver, but put it aside, the economy, jobs, open government, public safety.
No, that was one person's opinion.
Yeah, well,
and if you talk to Bertha Lewis, she will tell you, the activist, that it's not open government. She'll tell you it's anything but.
But hold on a second. from his biggest critic, we got things haven't gone to hell in a handbasket, which is the most praise he's lavished on anybody in months.
Well, he can't take credit for that.
Well,
I mean, that's
wait a
because of
minute.
Bloomberg
Wait
and
a minute.
Giuliani.
If you want to measure his political, interpersonal skills, you're not wrong. But if you want to look at the thing he's hired to do, which is to run a city, make it a little less of a plutocracy than the one of Bloomberg, give him a little credit.
Look, Dominic, I think you're very much on point. I would give him a D plus though, because he hasn't totally put the city in hell in a handbasket. Although, look, crime in public housing is increasing, and that's something that has to be taken care of because these are the most vulnerable folks in the city, mainly minority, who supported de Blasio, and he's got to look after the most vulnerable people. In addition to that, minority women businesses aren't getting contracts under de Blasio. They get more contracts under Bloomberg than they did de Blasio, and Scott Stringer, a fellow Democrat, has come out and said that. So there's a lot of room for improvement here, and the governor, the feud between him and the governor, at every corner, even in homelessness, even in allegiance disease, pre-K. If it wasn't for the governor, a lot of this stuff would not have happened under de Blasio. So.
That's the perception, Andrew. And do you think, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. He gets credit for things that he didn't have really a hand in, like the uptick in the economy. Okay, that happened on a national level, and it certainly wasn't through economic policies. But nonetheless, he seems to be getting blamed for some things, at least, out of his control as well. And even when he does stuff, he doesn't get credit for it. It's a tough thing to grade because I don't know the constituencies that are lined up making his case for him.
Well, I don't think he's responsible for the city's economy doing well, but if you recall when he was campaigning and when he was first elected, there were all these complaints or all these fears that this progressive agenda is going to destroy the city and companies are going to be fleeing. So it's not, the strength of the economy isn't, it's not that he did it, it's that his policies haven't spoiled the economy of New York City. I listened to this argument and I feel there's a lot of similarity between what we heard about Barack Obama, especially early on in his administration, that he did some good things, but he wasn't perceived particularly well, and everybody who you expect to have a complaint about him had a complaint about him, and he could have done more, but he hasn't. I mean, I think there's a lot of nitpicking that goes on.
Nitpicking?
Yeah.
He isn't punctual? I mean, he isn't punctual,
right.
And that rises to the level of a guy who steered the ship of state on the issue of getting rid of stop and frisk. I mean,
well, okay, but you know what? Think about one of the crises that he inherited and didn't cause. Okay, we saw obviously police and minority community issues. He chose to put Sharpton at the table with Bratton there. He chose, you can certainly argue, to in certain ways embolden the police here instead of cracking down when he should have used. I thought not tolerated when the backs were turned and whatever else. He allowed that, but then on the flip side, he was wishy-washy on stop and frisk, where he wasn't definitive one way or the other. To me, he sometimes wants it both ways, and I don't think whatever you want to criticize.
Stop and frisk is over. The city remains safe. He was the mayor. He and his police commissioner steered it that way. He has a problem in human relations. He is late.
Do you agree with him? Is that the problem he's got, that he doesn't have a good communication team?
He's got a crime problem as well. Story in today's newspaper, murders are increasing in New York City.
I guarantee we're going to see crime increasing
around the
The
nation.
historic low.
Well,
yeah,
wait a
okay,
minute.
but no, but we can't nitpick every
everything
piece
isn't
of the argument.
perfect, but crime generally remains very, very low.
But it's going to be a slow creep up because
Well,
you
then
have to
criticize
attack.
them then.
You have to
It's
attack.
creeping up
it is
right
creeping
now.
up.
Right now.
Some kinds are, some kinds aren't.
Right.
Was
These
stop and
quality
frisk
life
was
crimes are
stop and
creeping.
frisk a problem?
Absolutely, it was a problem.
Did he solve it?
I don't know if he solved it by
He deserves
himself.
some credit for
Wait,
that.
I would say
did
the
he
federal
solve it?
judge.
Yeah,
The last time I
it was
checked,
the
the federal judge
solved it.
solved the
He
problem.
implement the transition.
He campaigned
No,
on it.
no.
He
He
campaigned on
campaigned
it.
on it.
And
No,
okay, here's my point, Dom. You've seen guys come and go.
Right.
You've seen some people have
based on that,
turnarounds.
he's in
okay?
serious trouble.
We've seen. I did the poll numbers before. Rudy was in trouble. Bloomberg was in this trouble at the midpoint of their first terms. From lessons learned of the past, what does he need to do to have a better next 2 years so he gets a second term?
Number one, cut the national stuff. You're not a national leader, even though you are in your mind.
100%.
Every national appearance, you've got to stop that, Mr. Mayor. You got to do a Rudy Giuliani. Sun up to sundown. Sun up to sundown. New York City.
Holding Rudy Giuliani up as a role model?
Rudy Giuliani was a good mayor. Rudy Giuliani was a good mayor.
Thank you.
In terms of fighting crime.
Why don't you two
No,
guys step outside?
Why he was despised on September 10th, 2001.
He
as
was despised. I'm talking about fighting crime from that aspect. For example, that
Bring
shooting.
back Rudy and Mike.
For example, that shooting in Staten Island. Remember that shooting? The mayor's at the gym. Are you serious?
So are you
serious?
maintaining, though, his problems is optics and
And he's got a media problem. The media doesn't like him. He doesn't like the. Here's the truth. He doesn't like the media. The media doesn't like him. And when the media don't like you, goodbye.
whether that's fair enough, Richard, that's the truth.
He admitted it, that he had a communication issue also.
Pre-K.
That's
Stop
the
and frisk.
first time you were going to be at a loss for words. Yeah.
The nitpicking here, it's unworthy of journalists.
Oh,
and
really?
That's a hard
Vision
fence to
Zero,
jump over.
lowering the speed limit in New York. That really made a difference.
It did.
Actually, it did. There were fewer pedestrian deaths than
Yeah,
we've had
I mean,
in previous years.
look.
He has to do a better job upselling. He has to do a better job of reminding voters that he's actually had successes and claiming success for some of these things and reminding voters.
Should he stop fighting with Cuomo?
I think he probably will stop fighting with Cuomo.
You can't stop fighting with Cuomo.
Well, Cuomo will stop fighting with him.
That's exactly right.
Richard, one other point. You said I've been around for many mayors. I'm just going to say it. Who the hell are you to say you're going to talk to the press one day a week?
Yeah.
Are you insane? You weren't elected emperor. You're the
He's
mayor of New York.
100% Richard. Don't even try and debate that.
I mean,
Really? You really think that the public doesn't have a right to get answers on relevant questions?
I think the public does have a right to get relevant questions. And the fact that he's angered a bunch of elitists, neocons.
By the way, check out Richard's column in the Huffington Post coming about the media right now. All right, I'll ask this question. Do you think, have you seen enough, and I'll go this way, that he will turn around the next 2 years?
Yes.
No.
Who knows?
Maybe, but there's nobody. He's very stubborn. I'm telling you what I know from private conversation. He resents this type of conversation. He won't talk to me for a month now.
Can we replace the fence on that side of the table with some chairs?
But you got to have somebody to beat him. You got to have somebody to run
Don't
against
say a
him.
word. You just said, who knows? All right, so that's just a, okay. I want to get you involved in our conversation, so head over to Facebook and Twitter and sound off on our question tonight. How would you grade de Blasio's first couple of years as mayor, and why? You got a D and a D plus, and the other two won't deign to answer the question. Now, coming up next, cleaning up Albany. It was a promise Governor Cuomo rode into office on, but seems to have resisted in the wake of Silver and Skelos convictions. Will Cuomo become the reform governor once again? We're hearing rumbles that he may have something to say come state of the state here. We're going to have that and more after this.